Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we, try to cut through all the noise and get right into the really compelling stuff, the cutting edge innovations shaping our world. And today, wow, we're plunging into a really fascinating mix: art, technology, and believe it or not, real estate. If you've been following the industry, I mean, for years now, property owners, developers, they've been on this relentless quest almost for the next big amenity. It's not just about, throwing in a gym or a fancy lounge anymore. The whole game's shifted. Now it's really about finding these powerful tools that don't just sell square footage. They need to create like actual enduring value, stuff that differentiates a property in what's often a really crowded market and attracts, exactly the right kind of occupants, whether that's, say, discerning luxury buyers or maybe long-term residential tenants or even, a thriving corporate workforce. And here's the kicker. Sometimes the most revolutionary ideas, they don't come from these huge capital investments or groundbreaking new builds. Sometimes they pop up from the most, well, unexpected places, surprisingly low cost even, and they fundamentally transform how properties attract and, maybe more importantly, retain people.
And that is absolutely what we're here to unpack today. It's this quietly disruptive emergence of on-demand VR museums. It's really shaping up as a game-changing amenity within property technology, PropTech. And we're not just talking about some fleeting trend here or just another fun entertainment option. Not at all. What's really fascinating, I think, is that we're looking at a strategic investment, one with clearly measurable returns for owners and managers right across different asset classes. Our deep dive today, it isn't based on guesswork or theory. Our sources are directly from leading property technology magazines' industry reports. So that gives us a really grounded, practical, and importantly, data-driven look at this trend, which is picking up speed really fast. So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive is to properly unpack how Google's free VR museum tours have, kind of unexpectedly, become real estate's easiest to deploy. Most effective, definitely, in terms of engagement, and yeah, certainly the most photogenic amenity out there right now. We'll be looking at both the why, what makes it so appealing, so economically sound, and just as important, the how. How's it actually being put into practice in successful real-world properties? It's really a story where cultural access meets, well, smart commercial thinking.
Okay, hold on. Let's unpack this for a sec, because when we say VR museums in a real estate context, I think for a lot of people, their mind immediately jumps to, expensive, maybe clunky headsets, a dedicated room, maybe with motion tracking everywhere, a super specialized setup, almost like sci-fi stuff that costs a fortune and is probably obsolete in 2 years. So I gotta ask, are we really talking about that kind of high-tech, really expensive equipment here? Or is this something maybe much more accessible for the average property owner, something they might even have the basic infrastructure for already?
That's a great question, and yeah, it's a very common first thought. Yeah. And it gets right to the heart of what makes this specific amenity so, well, revolutionary and so accessible. We're absolutely not talking about custom-built proprietary VR things that need special hardware or, huge upfront development costs. Nope. The core tech and the huge library of content we're talking about, it comes primarily from Google Arts and Culture. Now, this platform, maybe it's a bit under the radar for folks outside the art world, but it has quietly become just an absolute powerhouse of cultural content. It's really democratizing access to, global heritage in a way we just haven't seen before. It's quite remarkable. Just think about the sheer scope, the scale of what's actually on this platform. Google Arts and Culture now streams these incredibly immersive tours from, get this, more than 2,000 partner museums and cultural institutions. And they're located in over 80 countries around the world. I mean, that's a truly global reach. It puts the world's art, its history, literally at your fingertips. And within that massive collection, you're looking at just an immense, almost unimaginable volume of digital assets. We're talking over 200,000 high-resolution images, often meticulously digitized, sometimes in gigapixel resolution.
Gigapixel. So you can zoom way, way in.
Exactly. You can zoom right in to see individual brushstrokes on a Rembrandt or, the actual weave of an ancient tapestry. It's incredible detail. Plus, there were over 7 million archival artifacts. Think historical documents, photos, little bits of history, all painstakingly preserved and digitized. Unprecedented access. And maybe the most compelling part for real estate use, there are around 1,800 Street View interiors.
Like Google Street View, but inside museums.
Precisely. So you can virtually walk through the grand halls of the Louvre or explore, say, the ancient ruins of Pompeii, wander the galleries of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, all from, wherever you are. It's not just a collection. It's this unparalleled, diverse, constantly growing archive of global culture, instantly available, offering a depth no physical collection could ever hope to match. Now, about accessibility and integration, this is where it gets really, really practical for PropTech. These assets, they are entirely free to use. And crucially, they can be embedded directly into any standard web browser or on any WebXR-capable display.
Okay, WebXR display, what's that exactly?
Yeah, good point. It's essentially just a screen or a device that's designed to smoothly show virtual and augmented reality experiences right there on the web. No need for special apps or complex software installs. So what this means, practically speaking, is you can literally transform what might otherwise be just a blank wall. Think about a big high-res monitor in a lobby, maybe digital signage, or even an interactive screen in a resident lounge. You turn those into vibrant, dynamic, really engaging cultural portals. It completely redefines what you can do with amenity spaces or even, digital marketing materials. Makes cultural enrichment just a simple plug-and-play feature. And this brings us right to what we're calling the turnkey archive idea. Just think for a moment about the traditional hassles, the liabilities that come with physical art installations in a commercial property. Right away, you're dealing with strict environmental controls, right? Maintaining exact humidity, temperature levels to stop damage to fragile artworks. It's constant. Then there's the incredibly complex, often prohibitively expensive freight logistics. Moving valuable pieces, especially internationally. Specialized crating, maybe armed guards, custom clearances. It's a huge operation.
Not to mention the insurance.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Specialized insurance policies are absolutely non-negotiable, covering everything from accidental damage, theft, vandalism, even, sadly, terrorism risks. It's a constant, high-stakes operational burden. With Google Arts and Culture, all of that just vanishes. You're dealing with digital files, not physical objects. No humidity control needed, no complex shipping, no specialized conservation teams on standby. It genuinely is a plug-and-play cultural amenity. It bypasses almost all of those traditional operational burdens and the significant risks tied to managing valuable physical art, transforms that logistical nightmare into basically managing a digital display.
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Because what you're describing, it's way more than just like projecting a few static digital pictures onto a screen or showing them on a tablet. What you're outlining is the ability to offer genuinely immersive, interactive experiences, like almost stepping into the Louvre or walking through the Rijksmuseum, but with zero of those usual physical art headaches. No climate control nightmares, no multi-million-dollar insurance premiums, no constant worry about damage. That just fundamentally changes the whole calculation for property owners, doesn't it? It moves way beyond just decorating a space or adding some passive background thing. Instead, it's genuinely enhancing the user experience in a way that's, well, scalable across maybe an entire portfolio. Incredibly dynamic with content that can change all the time and virtually risk-free. Wow. I mean, I imagine this completely redefines how they budget for and maybe even think about cultural amenities in the first place.
Absolutely, it really is a paradigm shift. And that leads us straight into why this amenity is fundamentally a game changer for real estate. It moves way beyond just the novelty or the, oh, that's cool factor to offer very real, very strategic advantages for property owners, especially those looking to attract and keep tenants or buyers in what's, let's face it, an increasingly tough market. It's really about leveraging culture as a competitive edge. First off, let's talk about the visual punch it delivers for, say, marketing decks.
Yeah.
In real estate, perception is just everything, right? The visual story you tell can absolutely make or break a sale or a lease. So imagine taking a standard floor plan deck, something that, let's be honest, can often feel pretty dry, maybe a bit technical, not very inspiring for potential occupants, and just instantly elevating it, transforming it with, say, a single stunning Vermeer screenshot rendered in WebXR.
Instead of just lines and numbers, you're showing
Well,
culture.
exactly. Instead of just showing square footage, you're implying a lifestyle, an experience. It's almost like having custom CGI created for your property. Those amazing photorealistic architectural renderings that cost tens of thousands per image. But here, you get that kind of impact without the crazy cost or the weeks of development time. This isn't just a pretty picture. It immediately communicates this sophisticated, cultured image for potential buyers or tenants. You're not just selling space anymore. You're selling an aspirational experience, a lifestyle that includes instant access to global culture right there in their building, or even on their phone via the leasing app. It differentiates a property in a way that's just incredibly powerful visually, creates an immediate, strong emotional connection. Then there's that aspect of zero object risk, which, for any property owner or asset manager, that is a massive differentiator, a huge relief probably. When you're dealing with digital gigapixel files, these ultra-high-res images, they literally never trigger conservation premiums, the costs tied to keeping fragile art pristine. They don't trigger transit premiums, which cover the huge risks of moving valuable art. And critically, they never trigger terrorism premiums, which are just an unfortunate reality for ensuring high-value physical assets in public spaces today.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about the terrorism insurance angle. That must be significant for physical art.
Yeah. It really can be, especially for prominent pieces in accessible locations. So you contrast that with a physical art collection. High insurance costs, rigorous security protocols needed to stop theft or vandalism, constant maintenance, climate control, often involving specialized art handlers. This virtual approach effectively eliminates the vast majority of that liability and operational complexity. Owners can offer this high-end, dynamic cultural amenity without the associated stress. The constant vigilance or the huge financial exposure is truly a negligible risk factor, frees up resources for other things. And maybe the most compelling point, there's a demonstrated, absolutely undeniable public appetite for this kind of content. This isn't just some niche interest for, art history buffs, not at all. We have concrete evidence that people are not just willing to engage with high-quality virtual cultural content, but they're actually eager for it, and doing so on a massive scale. Take the incredible example of the Norman Rockwell Museum's Imagining Freedom virtual field trip. In just its first 6 months, this immersive virtual experience logged over 50,000 classroom sessions.
50,000 in 6 months. That's huge.
It's incredible reach, yeah. Demonstrates its appeal to a really broad, diverse demographic, including kids and educators. It also recently won an Anthem Award for its ability to connect with a wide audience and deliver really impactful content. So this public acceptance, it's clear validation of its appeal as an amenity. It tells property owners, look, this isn't some speculative gamble. It's something that resonates broadly, provides real educational and entertainment value, and delivers an experience people actually want. People are ready for this. They're actively seeking out these kinds of immersive virtual engagements. It proves it's a mainstream attraction, not just some tech novelty.
Those insights are incredibly compelling. I mean, it's clear this isn't just about looking good or being a nice to have. It really is about the bottom line, about real strategic advantages. When we connect this to the bigger picture for real estate, wow, we're talking about shifts that aren't just, tiny incremental gains. They represent significant changes in revenue streams, operational efficiency, even how a property is positioned in the market. That's a powerful statement, especially in the, often pretty conservative world of real estate. So, okay, it sounds fantastic in theory, but where are property owners actually monetizing this? Where are they putting these VR museum experiences to work in a way that translates into real tangible value beyond just the, abstract benefits?
Right, and that's the critical next step, isn't it? Understanding the proven deployment patterns. Where is this actually working on the ground? And owners are finding some incredibly creative and highly effective ways to integrate this amenity across different real estate segments. From, say, ultra-luxury residential right through to corporate campuses. They're not just, sticking up a screen. They're strategically deploying this content to solve specific problems and capture real value. One of the most impactful patterns we're seeing is in these display suite culture corners. Think about it. When you're selling high-end real estate, especially pre-construction, you need to keep those prospective buyers engaged, often for quite a while during a visit. A fantastic example here is the Vision Digital Gallery. It was launched for buyers of the Aston Martin residences down in Miami. Now, this wasn't just a concept. This gallery was fully live and running 2 full years before the Temporary Certificate of Occupancy, the TCO, was even granted for the building.
2 years before anyone could even move in.
That's exactly. TCO, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is basically the official green light allowing a building to be occupied. So this amenity was in place long before residents could actually move in. The PropTech value here is huge. It keeps potential buyers deeply engaged, offers them this immersive, high-value cultural experience, while maybe sales staff are resetting a model unit, or handling other questions, or just allowing the prospect to linger, absorb the aspirational lifestyle being presented. It significantly extends their dwell time in that sales suite, makes the visit far more memorable, more sophisticated, more impactful than just a quick walkthrough. And there's a really brilliant strategic long-term play here, too. The content isn't just for selling. After handover, that same duty content can seamlessly flip, become a permanent, engaging amenity for the building's sky lounge, maybe a common area. Provides a flexible, future-proof cultural offering for the actual residents.
So it's a dual-purpose investment then. Sales tool first, resident amenity later. Smart.
Very smart. Supports both initial sales velocity and long-term resident retention and satisfaction. Another really significant area is lobby activation. And this goes straight back to that zero-art risk factor we talk about, the Ceci Digital Gallery in São Paulo, Brazil. That's a fantastic large-scale example. They upgraded their lobby display back in July 2025 to this massive installation, 120,000 LED clusters, which effectively quadrupled its resolution.
120,000 LED clusters. That sounds seriously high-res.
It is. It translates to an incredibly fine pixel pitch, probably something like p2.5 millimeter. That means the distance between the center of pixels is just 2.5 millimeters. Tiny. A smaller pixel pitch means higher resolution, a much sharper, more impactful image, even when you're viewing it up close like you would in a lobby. And this isn't just about impressive visuals. We know from digital signage studies, they consistently show around a 30% longer viewer dwell time compared to static art.
30% longer, just by being digital and dynamic.
That's what the studies show. So what this means in practice is that previously dead zone foyers, the spaces people just rush through, they get converted into these dynamic, engaging dwell time magnets. People actually stop. They interact. They look, maybe share a moment with a colleague or a family member. And they do all this without the property needing to take on that substantial risk profile of physical canvases. No extra security for art, no special climate control for paintings, no worries about vandalism. It creates this engaging, dynamic focal point that really enhances the ambiance, the perceived value, and just the whole experience of being in that space. And finally, we're seeing this amenity being used really brilliantly for family day programming, particularly on corporate campuses or in large residential communities. Several Fortune 500 campuses, for instance, they screened that Norman Rockwell virtual field trip we mentioned earlier during their 2025 Take Your Kids to Work events. The benefit here is pretty clear, and it works on a few levels. It converts unused rooms or maybe repurposes idle conference rooms into these vibrant, branded family engagement spaces. Essentially, pop-up museums for a day.
That's a great idea for those kinds of events.
Yeah, it provides really high affinity engagement for employees and their families, fosters a sense of community, gives them the memorable experience, and all at absolutely no additional content cost, right? Because Google Arts and Culture is free. It's a simple, effective way to activate underutilized spaces, provide valuable programming that appeals to a wide demographic. Especially useful for properties looking to boost their corporate amenities or offer family-friendly activities without racking up huge ongoing content licensing fees. It's just smart, efficient, and people really appreciate it.
That really does highlight the versatility, doesn't it? It's not just one thing. And what's fascinating here, as you said, is it's not just about looking good or being a nice to have. It's clearly about the bottom line. For property owners, the ultimate question always comes back to ROI, return on investment. Are there hard numbers, like concrete ROI metrics that definitively show this isn't just perceived value, but a real measurable financial benefit, something that impacts, leasing speed, rental income, operational costs?
Absolutely. And this is really where the conversation shifts from, oh, that sounds interesting, to, okay, this is an undeniable business case. We have solid ROI metrics, detailed cost benchmarks, using 2025 data, or what we call Tier 1 cost clusters, basically, the most reliable, common pricing models in the industry to back all this up. These aren't just estimates. These are validated figures from real-world operations. Let's start with faster lease-ups and higher rents. Metrics every single property owner obsesses over, right? There was a particularly compelling study from a Greystar portfolio review. This was done in January 2025, across their stabilized multifamily assets. Now, for context, Greystar operates the world's largest multifamily portfolio, hundreds of thousands of units globally. So their study isn't just some small sample size. It's validation on a massive industry-leading scale.
Okay, so what Greystar finds carries a lot of weight.
Exactly. And their findings were striking. Should definitely get every property owner's attention. They found that units offering both property-level and unit-level virtual tours, the kind of immersive content that a Google VR museum amenity could easily power or complement, they leased 5 days faster.
5 days faster per unit across a whole portfolio. That adds up incredibly quickly.
It really does. Think about the ripple effect of cutting vacancy by almost a full week per unit. That's immediate rent coming in, smoother operations, less marketing spend chasing empty units. It compounds over time. Furthermore, these units, because they had that immersive digital content, they produced 20% higher effective rent revenue.
20% higher rent.
Yep, 20% higher effective rent revenue, which they calculated translates to about US $1.3 million more per asset per year.
Wow, $1.3 million per asset? That's significant.
It's huge. And if that wasn't enough, it also trimmed vacancy loss by an impressive US $37,895 per property annually. So what this Greystar study definitively shows is that immersive content, like what these VR museums bring, translates directly into concrete, validated leasing speed, and significantly higher revenue. It's not just a perk, it's a serious profit driver. Beyond those direct leasing numbers, we also see significant uplift in dwell time, how long people stick around. Data from an InfoTrends retail study, for example, indicates that digital signage, the kind you'd use for these virtual museums, can extend browsing time by up to 30% in retail settings. And the principle absolutely applies to property lobbies or amenity spaces. Complementing that, research from Intel cites 4 times more display views compared to just static art
Four
installations.
times the views. People are just drawn to the dynamic display more.
That's what the data suggests. And if we connect this back to the commercial value for real estate, well, more time spent by prospective tenants or visitors in your lobby or amenity space means more opportunities for engagement. They absorb your marketing messages, they really experience the ambiance, they start to feel a connection to the property. This sustained engagement creates a more powerful, more memorable experience, increases the likelihood of conversion for prospects, enhances satisfaction for existing residents. It's about optimizing every square foot for maximum impact. Now, okay, let's talk money. The capital expenditure, the CapEx, for an LED wall, which is often the main hardware investment for these bigger, more impactful displays. Based on pooling data from 5 independent guides from 2024-25, the hardware cost tends to converge around US $400 to US $1,200 per square foot.
That's quite a range. What affects that?
Good question. It depends on factors like pixel pitch, how fine the resolution is, the overall size, and whether it's built for indoor or outdoor use. Outdoor is usually tougher and more expensive. On top of that hardware cost, you'll typically need to budget an additional 15% to 30% just for the installation. That covers things like structural mounting, all the electrical work, getting it configured properly. So to make that feel a bit more real, let's use a specific example. Imagine a 150 square foot P2.5 millimeter indoor LED wall.
Okay, 150 square feet, pretty decent size for a lobby. P2.5 millimeter means good resolution up close.
It's exactly. That P2.5 millimeter refers to the pixel pitch, the distance between LED centers. Smaller number, higher resolution, sharper image up close, ideal for indoor viewing. So a wall like that, something you might commonly see in a lobby or a main common area, would cost roughly US $90,000 for the hardware itself. And then you'd add approximately US $18,000 for the professional installation. So this makes that abstract cost very concrete, very budgetable for owners, shows it's a significant investment, yes, but a well-defined one. And of course, you can't forget the ongoing costs, the annual operations and maintenance, the O&M. For indoor LED walls, owners should typically budget around 3% of the initial hardware cost per year for ongoing upkeep. This usually covers things like routine maintenance, software updates, maybe some basic troubleshooting, minor repairs if needed. Energy consumption is also a factor naturally. Costs there typically range from, say, US $100 up to maybe US $500 per month. Depends heavily on how many hours it's on, the brightness, the type of content displayed, and of course, local energy rates.
Right, makes sense.
So for our example, 150 square foot wall, you'd allow about 3% of that $90 K hardware cost. So roughly US $2,700 per year for upkeep, plus that monthly energy cost. This gives owners a complete, transparent financial picture, shows that the ongoing costs are actually quite manageable, quite predictable, especially when you weigh them against the significant returns we were just talking about. It's a long-term investment that keeps delivering value.
Yeah, if we really connect this to the bigger picture for any property owner, these numbers, they aren't just like small tweaks. They represent really significant shifts, both in revenue generation and operational efficiency. We're talking about demonstrably cutting vacancy, boosting effective rents by serious percentages, and measurably increasing engagement within a space. This isn't just some nice-to-have visual upgrade anymore. It's looking like a strategically impactful investment with a clear, validated financial upside. For an owner who's really trying to maximize their asset value, this puts it in a whole different league compared to a lot of other amenities they might consider. It almost sounds like, I don't know, like a new kind of anchor tenant in itself, just creating value by being there.
It absolutely does feel that way sometimes. And that naturally raises the important question then. How do owners actually do this effectively? How do they roll it out? And maybe just as important, what potential pitfalls should they be looking out for to make sure it runs smoothly and they actually capture all those benefits we've discussed?
Yeah.
Because, even with amazing ROI, practical, real-world implementation is always, always key.
Exactly. It's one thing to get excited about the why and the what, but the how. That's where the rubber really meets the road, isn't it? So yeah, let's walk through the practical steps. What should property owners be thinking about if they want to integrate this amenity smoothly into their spaces and really maximize its impact?
All right, let's break down what seems to be the essential implementation checklist for owners looking to deploy this pretty powerful amenity. First thing, absolutely crucial, content curation. While the sheer, just overwhelming volume of stuff on Google Arts and Culture's major strength, It also means you need a deliberate strategy. You can't
Wow.
just throw everything up there. We strongly advise owners curate a rotating 5-tour loop of content.
A 5-tour loop. Why 5 specifically?
It's a manageable number. Enough variety, but not overwhelming to manage. Think of iconic places with broad appeal. The Louvre, the Rijksmuseum, the Getty, maybe the Wallace Collection, the Uffizi. Big names, great art. But the key here, and this is absolutely critical for keeping people engaged long term, is to refresh this loop. Monthly is good, or at least very regularly. Why? Because if the content never changes, it just becomes wallpaper, static background noise. A dynamic, constantly changing selection keeps the experience fresh, encourages visitors to look again, keeps the amenity a vibrant focal point, prevents that visual fatigue. Okay, next up, the technical setup. You need a truly seamless experience. Given how high-res these gigapixel assets are, you absolutely need to edge cache these files on a local player.
Edge cache, meaning store it locally.
Exactly. Store the big files right there on site. This is crucial to avoid those really frustrating Wi-Fi stalls or buffering issues or images getting pixelated, especially during busy times, rush hour in your lobby or sales suite. Imagine someone trying to zoom in on that Vermeer brushstroke we talk about, and the screen just freezes. Instantly ruins the whole immersive feeling. So to handle those bandwidth peaks, make sure playback is smooth for these HD visuals. You should specify a 1 gigabit Ethernet uplink. That's super fast, dedicated data transfer. Or for really big 4K displays, maybe even an on-premise 4K player. That stores the content locally, eliminates streaming delays entirely. And critically, you have to test. Rigorously test latency during peak traffic periods. Make sure the experience stays fluid and responsive even when the building is busiest. Nothing kills an immersive experience faster than technical glitches or slow loading. Licensing clarity is another absolutely non-negotiable step, needs meticulous attention. Google's general terms for arts and culture, they typically cover educational and editorial use pretty broadly. That's usually fine. However, when you're talking about, say, lobby loops tied to rent premiums, or basically any scenario that could be seen as directly commercial, enhancing the value proposition of your for-profit building, it is absolutely essential that you clear these uses directly with Google. The contact is press@google.com.
So you need explicit permission for commercial use, basically.
Yes, get it cleared. It's a critical step to avoid any potential IP issues or copyright problems down the road. Furthermore, while most Google embeds are broadly covered, some of those ultra-high-res gigapixel scans, they can carry museum-specific permissions or restrictions, meaning even though Google hosts it, the individual museum or collection might have its own specific licensing rules for commercial use, even just for a lobby display.
Okay, so it's potentially 2 layers of permissions to check, Google and the museum.
Potentially, yes, for certain specific high-res scans. So it's vital to always check each collection's specific rights FAQ page right there on Google Arts and Culture. Make sure you're fully compliant. Avoid those IP pitfalls. Definitely not something you want to guess about. The consequences could be pretty severe. Then, measuring success. It's really important to implement proper analytics to truly understand the amenity's impact. Is it actually working? We suggest looking at technologies like ceiling sensors or maybe computer vision heat maps.
Heat maps to see where people stand and look.
Exactly. These sophisticated tools can help you objectively track visitor traffic, track dwell time within the amenity space, and then crucially, link that data directly to things like leasing conversions or maybe tenant satisfaction scores. This kind of data lets you really validate the amenity's impact, understand user behavior, what content are they engaging with most, for how long, who's interacting, and that, in turn, informs future decisions about content selection, where to place displays, maybe even broader property layout ideas. It turns what could just feel like a qualitative benefit into something properly quantifiable, proves its tangible value to stakeholders, to finance teams, and finally, straightforward but essential, budgeting. Based on what we discussed earlier, you need to explicitly budget for both the hardware and those ongoing O&M costs. Just as a reminder, for that example 150 Susurrant indoor LED wall, you're looking at roughly $90 K hardware plus $18 K install, and then budgeting around 3% of that hardware cost annually for upkeep plus energy. Having these figures clearly laid out from the start, built into your pro forma, prevents nasty surprises later and ensures the amenity's long-term financial viability and contribution to your asset's value.
Okay, that's a really solid checklist. But beyond just implementing it correctly, what about potential risks that owners should maybe be aware of? And more importantly, how can they effectively mitigate those risks to make sure it's always a positive user experience and, protect their investment? Because even the most brilliant tech can sometimes have unforeseen challenges, right?
That's a crucial consideration, absolutely. Because, yeah, even those innovative amenities can come with potential challenges. Addressing them proactively is really key to long-term success. One key area is accessibility and also the potential for cyber sickness, especially if you do offer experiences involving VR headsets. Now, while most of Google Arts and Culture works fine on screens, some properties might choose to offer headset experiences for, deeper immersion.
Right, some might want that wow factor.
Exactly. But to mitigate cyber sickness, which can be really disorienting or nauseating for some people, we strongly recommend capping any headset sessions of 15 minutes, maybe less. Prolonged use can definitely induce motion sickness or discomfort in some folks.
Yeah.
Equally important, always offer captions for any audio elements, and always provide a standard 2D browser fallback option. This ensures inclusivity for everyone, including those who might not be comfortable with VR headsets or who have accessibility needs, or maybe just prefer not to use a headset. Lets them still engage with the content comfortably. That multimodal approach really maximizes your reach and user satisfaction. We touched on bandwidth peaks earlier, but honestly, it bears repeating as a significant operational risk. In high-traffic lobbies, busy display suites, if your bandwidth isn't up to scratch, you get that frustrating buffering, pixelation, just a degraded experience. Turns your high-end amenity into a source of annoyance.
Yeah, nothing worse than tech that doesn't work smoothly.
Right. So the mitigation strategy here needs to be robust. Specify that dedicated 1 gigabit Ethernet uplink, that very high-speed dedicated connection. Or, for the absolute best, most reliable experience, especially with 4K, use an on-premises 4K player that stores the content locally. And like we said, rigorously test latency during your peak traffic times, run simulations, identify and fix potential bottlenecks before they impact your guests or tenants. Proactive network planning is just essential. And finally, sorry to sound like a broken record, but we have to reemphasize image rights and IP clarity. While most Google embeds are generally covered for a wide range of uses, there's that really important nuance owners must be aware of. Ultra-high-resolution scans, particularly certain gigapixel files, can sometimes carry specific restrictions from the collection itself. So even though Google hosts it, the museum might have its own more stringent licensing requirements for commercial use, even just for your lobby display.
So really the bottom line is, always check the source museum's rights page.
Always. Check the museum's specific rights page or FAQ section for every single collection you intend to use in a commercial setting. Don't make assumptions. Ever. That due diligence ensures you're fully compliant with IP laws, avoids potential legal headaches, which could be anything from cease and desist letters to significant fines. It's a small step that protects a potentially large investment.
Okay, so bringing this all together then, what does it all mean? This deep dive, it's really shown us that streaming Google Arts and Culture VR tours offers something genuinely unique and really powerful for the real estate industry. It moves way beyond just being a pretty picture on the wall. It's becoming like a central strategic asset in the whole PropTech toolkit.
Precisely. What this really demonstrates is a true paradigm shift, I think. We're moving from purely physical assets being the main drivers of property value to digital experiences that are equally, maybe even more, potent as differentiators. It's photogenic, it's low risk, it's a cultural amenity that delivers concrete, quantifiable benefits. It demonstrably can shorten those lease cycles, significantly extend lobby dwell times, and it just slides neatly into existing digital twin marketing strategies, integrates seamlessly into the modern PropTech playbook, enhances perceived value, enhances user experience in a way that's scalable and incredibly efficient.
And with that robust, 2025 portfolio scale leasing data from a huge player like Greystar, dot combined with a fully triangulated cost cluster knowing what it actually costs to implement and run, this upgrade, it really isn't just eye candy anymore, is it? It's a line item with provable return on investment. It's not just about looking good or keeping up with the Joneses next door. It's about making a tangible, significant difference to the bottom line, boosting revenue and operational efficiency. For an industry that's constantly hunting for that next competitive edge, this seems like a pretty clear winner.
Yeah, I think for owners who are really hunting for that next competitive edge, the question isn't really, why should we add virtual art anymore? The compelling data, the proven deployment patterns we've talked about, they've largely answered the why. Instead, the real question now becomes, okay, which gallery goes live first, Carnum? It challenges them to think about how quickly, how effectively they can activate this powerful proven amenity. How soon can they start transforming their properties in these sort of mini cultural destinations? Think of the possibilities. A rotating exhibit from the Hermitage 1 month, then maybe a deep dive into ancient Egyptian artifacts the next. The content is virtually endless, and the benefits seem incredibly clear.
So, what stands out to you from today's deep dive? Maybe it's just how accessible these incredible world-class cultural assets have become. Or perhaps it's those undeniable ROI figures that Grace Star laid out. We really hope this has given you a fresh perspective on what's truly possible in this evolving world of PropTech. And perhaps, maybe sparked an idea for your own spaces, or even just something you'll look for in your next property search. Join us next